Hey, recently I've been listening again to a series of lectures on Calvinism by Dr. Derek W. H. Thomas, professor of practical and systematic theology at Reformed Theological Seminary. The seminary is one of the many educational institutions that are part of iTunes U. If you've never checked out iTunes U, you should. It's a rich resource filled with loads of edifying educational material, video and audio, and better still, it's all free. To the right of the screen is a link to Reformed Theological Seminary's iTunes U site, as well as a link to the general iTunes U site. The lectures come from Dr. Thomas's course entitled Theological Foundations. iTunes U even provides a syllabus for the course, as you can see there. As one should expect, the bulk of the course's content is composed of basics of Reformed theology, more specifically, the basics of Calvinism. Among the things Dr. Thomas covers are the Calvinist doctrines of election and reprobation. This video is about the doctrine of reprobation, characterized by Dr. Thomas as, quote, the necessary complement to election. What is the doctrine of reprobation? Well, according to the Westminster Confession, it is the belief that, quote, by the decree of God, some men and angels are foreordained to everlasting death. These angels and men are particularly and unchangeably designed, and their number is so certain and definite that it cannot be either increased or diminished. Calvinist believers say that their God is wholly responsible for election to salvation. Election is entirely by the grace of their God and completely unconditional. In fact, the hue in the Calvinist acrostic tulip stands for unconditional election. It is described as an act of divine sovereignty with complete disregard to any merit or foreseen faith in the so-called elect. Now, as I noted, Dr. Thomas of Reformed Theological Seminary says the, quote, necessary complement to the doctrine of unconditional election is the doctrine of unconditional reprobation. Reprobation is described as an act of divine sovereignty with complete disregard to any lack of merit or foreseen lack of faith in the so-called reprobate. Until I recently listened again to Dr. Thomas's lecture, I had misunderstood this fundamental tenet of Calvinist theology. More correctly, I had not fully understood it, and I suspect I'm not unique in this respect. Let's listen to a bit of what Dr. Smith says about reprobation in one of the lectures.
What is more important is that reprobation is as unconditional as election is. In this decree, God did indeed foresee that man is sinful because he had already decreed the entrance of sin. But man's sin was not the final cause of reprobation, only the instrumental cause. And God is the first and final cause of all things, including, therefore, election and including, therefore, reprobation. If men were reprobated because of their sin, then all men would be reprobated, because all men are sinners.
While Calvinist Christians are fond of saying that the non-elect will merely be punished for their sins, in fact, that is not what their theology holds. Rather, their theology holds that the non-elect are not rejected because of their sins, not because of anything in them or anything they've done. No, Calvinism holds that the non-elect are rejected by God solely because God opted to reject them. The God of Calvinism is the God of Romans 9:11-13. Yet before the twins, that is, Jacob and Esau, were born or had done anything good or bad, in order that God's purpose in election might stand, not by works, but by him who calls, God said, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. The whole "the wages of sin is death" bit is just a fig leaf, a cover for what Calvinist theology actually holds. If one is going to hell, it's not because one has sinned, rather it's because God has foreordained, and particularly an unchangeably designed one, to be damned. As the big man himself wrote, quote, "For God does not create all human beings in the same condition, but ordains some to eternal life, the others to eternal damnation. It is, as Calvin repeatedly says in his Institutes, all gratuitous. No one merits salvation, and no one merits damnation. Like election, reprobation is unconditional. To say otherwise would make the God of Calvinism less than sovereign, because he would be conditioned by and reacting to his creatures." Now, Calvinist believers have managed to trick themselves into believing that unconditional reprobation is an expression of justice. It's really nothing more than might makes right. The rest of humankind, unburdened by Calvinist phantasms, figured out long ago that justice is a value of volition and action. We recognize that it is unjust to randomly penalize people merely for being. So the next time a Calvinist tries to tell you that the God of Calvinism sends people to hell for their sins, tell the Calvinist you know what Calvinism actually teaches, Calvinism's dirty little secret, as it were. Namely, human sin is not the first and final cause of reprobation. Rather, God is. Thanks.